what I do really would not have been possible if I had not come to iHouse. So it's not just an attempt to make you guys feel good about your educational investment. It really is true, I think, that certain ideas can only be created in this context. So what am I talking about? So I'm executive director of WattTime.org. We are a tech startup. And so what we do is we have software that you can put in smart devices, a Nest thermostat, a Tesla electric vehicle, your phone, anything that has a Wi-Fi connection, which is about 26 billion devices worldwide right now, uses electricity. And we invented some software that can cut the carbon footprint of that electricity by making it run off of renewable energy, even though you're plugging it into the regular wall outlet. But that's about as far as we match other tech startups. We are also a little different in that we're a nonprofit, a very unusual choice for a tech startup. And we were founded here at iHouse. And I've been realizing recently we only could have been founded here at iHouse. Because unlike most startups, we have a staff that is very, very small, but we've had more than 200 technical experts who have lent their capabilities to help build WattTime. Now, some of those are professionals at the US Department of Energy. Some of them are Google engineers and lawyers. But a lot of them were Cal undergrads, in particular at iHouse. And I think it's been really interesting why that's true. So what we do is we answer the question, if I flip that light switch, what power plant is it going to affect? Am I going to turn on a coal plant, or am I going to turn on a windmill? One of these things is really bad for climate change. One of these things is fine. You can use all the wind energy you want. You're not hurting anybody. The only reason that question is interesting is because it changes constantly. Turns out, what I learned in my PhD, every 5 minutes, the grid operators change all the power plants, and suddenly flipping that light switch is going to do something really different. So if you knew exactly watt time to use your energy, you could deliberately use wind power or solar power instead of coal plants. Pretty cool. So what our technology does is it finds out about 70% of things that use electricity turns out have a little bit of flexibility in when they use it. So you think of your refrigerator as always being turned on. Turns out most of the time your fridge is actually sitting there off, waiting for stuff to get so warm it needs to cool it down a little bit again. Same thing for most things that use power. They're actually spending most of their time turned off. So what our software does is it goes in there and it says, instead of turning on at random times, how about you move those times that they're turning on, you move that little spike of energy to use energy at moments when clean power plants are providing it. You're basically boycotting fossil fuel plants, sticking it to the man, and using renewable power. So I thought this was pretty cool, and this was an idea I had in class one day, and I talked to some Google engineers who said, yep, this is possible, we could write that software, and that is where most projects die. That is what would normally have happened to my hackathon project. People would have said that's kind of fun, and that would have been the end of the story. Except I went to iHouse. So what I think is really true here is that had I not eaten in that particular dining hall, I would not have been sitting around talking to people who are from other majors than myself, who were new in this country and looking to join something kind of interesting, and who were just really good at building connections. So what happened is I was mentioning to Margot over there that I had just done this, and she said, heck, I'll build a prototype. I'll build a little mock-up so that you can, because Gavin, you're not very good at explaining things, let's be real, you're a scientist. You could explain things a little better. And then she mentioned this to her friend Breno, who's really good at art, and he said, heck, I'll make that into a website so you could explain this to anybody in the world. And then Vish, who's an engineer, said, heck, why stop there? I'll build a prototype. And then Giovanni said, why stop there? I'll take that prototype around to different companies and I'll ask them, would you really buy this? And it kept going like that. Every day, we would go to the dining hall, people would say, what are you doing? And we would explain, and somebody new would join the project. And this has continued until at the present day we've had more than 200 people build this startup that none of us intended to found. So real quick, I think what's so interesting about this story is how different the different things we did are. So my expertise is in this type of data analysis. I can tell you any given little spot on the US map right now, how clean is your energy on a scale of green to red. Green's renewable, red's dirty. Margot's expertise was in communications and art, and so she was able to actually take this into stories on a little web tool that people could understand. Breno then turned that into a website. Vish actually got the first little smart device live with our technology just because he likes building stuff. And then Gio actually started calling up windmills saying, hey, if we could get you more demand, if we could make people use more of your energy, would that be cool? Would you like that? Would you use this technology? And we iterated until the answer is yes. And I'll just stop with those 5, but there are a lot more people in that list. So based on that, we actually were able to get demos live, and more small companies started saying, I'll take a leap on those Berkeley students. We didn't tell them how ambitious we were at that point. We would just say, hey, we have a concept. So it started going until today. Some very serious companies have announced that they're going to adopt this technology. So we have many of the largest manufacturers in the world saying that they're going to buck the trend of doing what regulators told them to do. They're going to buck the trend of doing what their utility told them they're going to do. And they're going to follow an idea that some Berkeley students just thought would be cool. So this is not a conventional story for a startup. But what I've learned is this is actually how a lot of startups are, that instead of just making a lot of money, they actually make the world a different place. What I think is so interesting about this is that it could not have happened if we were not all so good at crossing cultural boundaries. So if you have a startup, you start out with an idea, you move on to a prototype, then you try to persuade everybody it's a good idea, then you actually partner with companies, and pretty soon you're advising governments. Those are really different types of things. So I don't mean the fact that every phase on this project was championed by someone from a different country, although that's why here at iHouse we start thinking about culture. What I mean is that every phase was championed by a person with a different expertise. In the beginning, we were trying to pitch professors and students. Pretty soon, we were trying to pitch engineers from Facebook. And then we were talking to rich donors, and then companies, and then governments. And each one of those groups of people has a different culture and a different way of thinking. And what we learned is the same skill sets that make us pretty good at working across cultural boundaries and nations make us really good as a team at understanding different ways of thinking about the world. And the only way you can go from an idea to something that is multinational in this way is to be good at talking to very different types of people about very different types of things. And so then the last step I think that's so interesting is that we started practicing this here at Berkeley, but most folks at Berkeley were not as sharp at it as iHouse students. So we had econ majors passing the baton to engineering majors, who were passing the baton to psych majors. For each phase of the project, we had to think about the world a different way, and basically a different person was suddenly in charge of the project. And all of that was only possible because instead of founding a company the traditional way with one group of people who choose their friends who think like them, this started at iHouse, where we fundamentally from the beginning were incredibly different skill sets from incredibly different places, thinking about how we could make the world better. Thanks.